So that makes it official. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome. Our numbers are sparse. I think people may still trickle in slowly, but I would like to get started. So if you'd like to move up, please feel free to come a little bit closer. We're not in a plane, so you don't necessarily need to have a row to yourself. Thank you very much. I'm Melinda Crane. It's my pleasure to accompany you this afternoon as moderator at this panel session on governance of major passenger transport hubs. Demographic and social change, in particular urbanization, are, as you know, putting increasing pressure on passenger transport systems worldwide. Demand for public transportation is rising. Here in Europe, transport companies predict that it will grow by 45% between now and 2030, and that makes the role of the hub more important than ever. Rail and bus stations, airports, ferry terminals that offer a high degree of intermodal interconnection and can accommodate large flows of passengers will constitute an absolutely core element of transport systems in the future. And those two factors, volume and interconnection, are a function not only of physical infrastructure, but also of governance. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the topic that we want to explore here today. And we want to do that in a format that is, at least in my experience, new here at the International Transport Forum. We want to take a look at 3 specific case studies involving passenger hubs in Europe and Asia. The case studies that span both the public and private sectors and that cover both rail and bus as well as port-related transportation. And we want to look at lessons learned and best practices with respect to 3 particular facets in particular. Namely, to what extent intermodal governance frameworks are different for publicly and privately operated transport services, at what political and organizational level decisions to develop passenger hubs should be taken, and what coordination issues create barriers to developing successful hubs and how those barriers can be overcome. So those are a couple of the guiding questions that our participants will address in their case studies and or that we can raise in the panel discussions to follow. And we have 3 different speakers. If you looked at the program, you may have seen that we were to have had 4, but unfortunately the speaker for the Port of Venice could not join us today, so our numbers are a little bit smaller, but that means we'll be able to go into more depth, which is wonderful. So I will now introduce all 3 of our speakers and then ask them to get us started in terms of presenting the case studies. We'll begin with François Bausch. He is Luxembourg's Minister for Sustainable Development and Infrastructure. He's a member of the Green Party and he has served 2 terms in Parliament. Prior to entering politics, he began his career with the Luxembourg National Railway. François Bausch, welcome. Next to him is seated, yes, thank you, you can applaud. I can't because I don't have a free hand. Next to His Excellency is Jacob Kam Chaik-Pui. He is Managing Director, did I massacre that name? Managing Director of the Operations and Mainland Business for the MTR Corporation, a Hong Kong-based rail operator, as you no doubt know. He oversees its transport operations in Hong Kong and its rail and property businesses in mainland China. He's also responsible for overseeing rail operations standards across all of MTR's operations globally. And finally, it's a pleasure to introduce André Schwemmlein. He is co-founder, and by the way, if we're clapping for one, we should clap for all, so thank you. André Schwemmlein is co-founder and managing director of Flixbus, which is a green bus fleet operator offering connections at major hubs in a range of European cities. Prior to founding Flixbus, Mr. Schwemmlein founded an IT startup, and he also worked as a consultant at the Boston Consulting Group. Great that you can be with us as well. So here are the ground rules. We're going to give each of the speakers about 15 minutes to lay out their case studies. Then I'm going to ask whether anyone in the audience has clarification questions. So the first round of questions right after each case study, please, mostly just about clarification. Then, after we've heard all three case studies, I'd like to come back with the panel discussion, also with your input, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, so that we can highlight some of the various comparisons and issues that the case studies raise. So content, please save it for a little bit later on, but if there are clarification issues, definitely we can address those right after each case study. So I'll ask Minister Bausch to please get us started.
So thank you first for inviting me to that I can do this presentation here this afternoon. Maybe to start, maybe some figures about Luxembourg and the development of Luxembourg to understand why I will present you this multi-model system that we will put in place in the next years in Luxembourg. As you can see on the map, Luxembourg, small country, 2,500 and something more, a little bit more square kilometer surface. We have actually 600,000 inhabitants, but what is important, we have 600,000 inhabitants, but we have 400,000 jobs in Luxembourg. And all these jobs are concentrated in the middle of the country, in the capital and around the capital. And that already shows you what is the main problem, because inside of the country you have not enough inhabitants to occupy all these jobs. So we have major flows coming from Belgium, from Germany, and from France. For example, 43,000 commuters coming from Belgium, 90,000 from France, and 43,000 from Germany. And all these people from the neighborhood countries, they are coming actually now at this moment by, I would say, 88% by car. And in each car you have one person. So that's the major problem that you have. So we had to find solutions to look for other ways of mobility. And the key framework that we will build now is a framework that is built on multimodality. So to combine all the modes of transport that we have, coming from pedestrians or cyclists to car users, individual car users, to classical train users, buses, and we will introduce in the next months also a new tramway system through the capital. This tramway system, here you can see the first network that will be in place, like you can see it on the slide, in the total in 2021. The first part we will launch the 10th of December this year, is the part going from near the airport where is marked Findel to Lux Expo. So that's one of the two major points where we have really a very high concentration of jobs. But the whole network at the end will link all the major economic hubs that we have in and around the capital of Luxembourg, where I would say 70 to 75% of the jobs, of the 400,000 jobs, are concentrated in Luxembourg. So the tram network will be really the backbone of this system, but on this backbone you will have 9 multi-modal hubs where you can really exchange the mode of transport depending on what you are using in front of it. For example, when you start at the airport when you see here over on the right side, the airport at the second point just after the airport is one important multi-modal hub where we will build a park and ride facility for 4,000 cars. You will also have the possibility there to charge e-cars in the future. You will have it's called the M-Box, and it's facilities to really put in your bicycle on a secure way. You will also have a bus station, a very important bus station, where you have the connections with the bus, and the tram especially will then pass by. And so you can come to this multimodal hub with one of these mode of transport that I mentioned before, and then change there on the tram that will bring you very quickly through the city where you want to go, depending on where you are working. And you have the same situation, all these 9 multimodal hubs. The next one is Lux Expo, and then the center of the city you have 2, and then going southeast of the city to what is mentioned here, Clochetor or Hauwald, where we also have important hubs like this. In the same way, we extend our classical railway system. So we will enlarge. We have one major railway network that is going south to the country in direction of France, for example. We will build 2 new lines on our railway network, and inside and around the city itself, we will build also 2 new major railway stations. Here you can see the new tram that is it's in work in progress at the moment. So, like I said, the first part, that's the first part that you can see there on the plateau of Kirchberg, where you have the major banks in Luxembourg situated. Will open at the 10th of December, and as you can see already, also here on this picture, we try to combine the tram also inside in the city with soft mobility, for example, cyclists and pedestrians. A complete new cycling network is built beside the whole tram network. This is one of the major new railway stations that we built. Before you had not, you see the towers, you have all the European institutions, for example, the European Court of Justice. On the right side, you can see also my ministry, by the way. But you have also the major banks on this plateau. And on this plateau, the tram will run. But before, this railway station did not exist. It will also be finished in December this year. So before, you had to go to the main railway station and then take buses to go over to this plateau de Kirchberg, and that was a long way to go, and you had a lot of traffic in the city center. We had even the situation, because we need such a high capacity on this backbone, so that that is now actually deserved by buses. We have bus congestions inside the city, and all these buses will disappear at the moment when the tram will replace them. But what is important, at the end, you can come with the train directly from France, for example, to this station, and we built a very modern funicular to go up to the Kirchberg to connect you with the tram, then that will bring you then where you want to go. Another important point is also that we want to combine this new network and this multimodality hubs with the e-mobility, because for me it's clear e-mobility will be the future regarding the individual mobility, and Luxembourg will be really at the top to favorize e-mobility. We have a public charging infrastructure that will be operated we are now putting it in place. It will be operated until the end of the year, already a big part of it. Until 2020, we will put in place 800 charging stations with 1,600 charging points, because each charging station will have 2 charging points. So compare this 1,600 charging points of Luxembourg with what will be done in Germany, in France, in other countries. You can see which high degree you will have at the end in Luxembourg for charging stations. And what is also important, we did this by a large public investment, because that allows us to have one system for the whole country. So no matter who is your provider of electricity, for example, these charging stations will accept every provider, no matter who is it. And even its roaming system is integrated in, so even when you come from France or from Germany, you can use the system with your card. So it's very important to understand this, because that is one of the major problems that we have actually in most of the countries, that you have not one system but several systems, and that it's not so easy then to develop e-mobility. So e-mobility will, for the individual mobility, one of the major points on this. The whole network combined with the extension of the classical railway, we will invest in the next 5 years, or we have already invested the last 2 years. We have a very high degree of investment, public investment. We'll invest 2.5 billion euros in the next 4 or 5 years in these systems. So at the end, in 2022, when also the classical railway extension is finished, we have a high performance on the classical railway combined with this new network of the tramway and the 9 multimodal hubs for mobility solutions. At the end, I am sure that this system will have a very huge success, and we intend, today you have model splits. Model splits, it's about 20% against 80% by cars in total in the country, because beside of the fact that you have many commuters that are coming to Luxembourg, also inside the country you have a lot of traffic. Everybody will come to the center, well, because there are the jobs. We have a model split today of 80-20, and the aim is to go on the national level to at least minimum 75-25, but especially in the areas like this in the center, we want to go to 60-40. So we want to have a major shift away from individual mobility to have more multimodality, like it is shown by this system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Do we have questions about clarification, factual questions, something that wasn't quite clear to you or something you'd like to hear expanded upon right now? Okay, please. Could we get a microphone to this gentleman? Thank you. And do tell us who you are, if you don't mind.
Yes, Klaus Gier from KfW, German Development Bank. I have a question regarding relocation and of jobs. Was this ever considered as an option to say some of the jobs to put to other places within the Grand Duchy, or are you taking this as a given that the jobs will be confined to Kirchberg and the other areas where lots of banking sector is active? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's a very good question, and you are completely right, and we are considering also this. As you know, we developed we had the former steel industry in the south. We built up a completely new university on the side of the former steel industry. So the whole, for example, we develop also beside the financial sector, who is very important in Luxembourg, that is much more based in the city center. But we want to develop also the ICT. We are now developing the ICT sector very strongly, and we want really to focus more than in the south along this university in the south of the country at this former Frisch Industriel. And we have also a plan that in the context of having a better territorial cohesion, also to build up a new hub in the north of the country between, nobody knows now where these cities are, but because we have Ettelbrück, Dückesch, that's 2 major cities in the north of the country. It's a more rural side of the country, but there also we have a big potential to develop jobs in the future. And one of the key elements also to have a better mobility is to avoid mobility and to have a better decentralization of jobs that compared to what we have today.
Thank you. That goes a little bit beyond the area of clarification, so I'll just ask, do we have other clarification questions? Otherwise, we'll wait on content matters until later on.
Thank you. Roger Allport from Imperial College is my name. Could I be clear who is responsible for planning, implementation and operations of the system?
For the national railway sector, it's the Luxembourg state. who invests in the infrastructure, and the exploitation is done today by the national carrier, the CFL is our national railway company, but who is completely privatized, so it belongs to the state, but is a privatized company. And then you have, for example, the tram network. A special private company had been founded, and the shareholders are 75% is the Luxembourg state and 25% the city of Luxembourg. So it depends also which system it is. Or the bus system, you have also, I would say 80% of the national bus system is financed by the Luxembourg state. It's public service. That's the Luxembourg state. All the 9 multimodal hubs are completely financed by the Luxembourg state.
And I want to pick up a bit later on coordination issues, so we'll come back to that, I think, after the following case studies. Any other question just on clarification? Okay, thanks very much. Then I will ask Jacob to go ahead with his case study.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I prepared my slides and I was told that I have too many slides, so I removed the title page and the conclusion and the thank you page. Unfortunately, the forum has accepted my modifications. We haven't got time to, we have many different types of transport hubs in Hong Kong. We only have time to talk about one today. This is certainly not the busiest hub in our network. However, this is probably the most unique. Part of this is still being built. We want to talk about the one in the middle that is being built, which is the high-speed rail terminal at what we call a place at West Kowloon. This particular terminal is an integrated rail plus property design. It has 6 commercial buildings on top of the actual terminal itself. The terminal, believe it or not, is all underground. Now, the size of this terminal is about 70% of the Hong Kong International Airport. Now, you may not have been in Hong Kong, so just as a comparison, the patronage that Hong Kong International handles is comparable to Frankfurt, Charles de Gaulle, Heathrow, JF Kennedy. So it's that kind of metropolitan city type of airport. And the railway station, it's about, railway terminal is about 70% of the airport terminal size. It's all built underground. Now, the reason is that we want to achieve a good city landscape in that particular area. So, in fact, the only part that is above ground is the entrance hall with a rooftop garden, which allow citizens to go up to the roof, and also the major, the open plaza in front of the station, which is also a lot of greenery. Basically, is designed as a park. So, what we want to achieve, if you could see Hong Kong there in China's map, right down there. Okay, we want to be a southern gateway into mainland China's high-speed rail network. In fact, we want to be the southern gateway of the mainland China high-speed rail network. That is currently now 21,000 kilometers, and they're planning to add another 6,000 kilometers in the next 5 years or so. When completed, then we will have direct train service from Hong Kong to all the major cities in China. If we look at the governance of this terminal, irrespective of the business models that we use, there are some basic principles that the Hong Kong government and ourselves, MTR Corporation, which is a listed company, but still majority owned by Hong Kong government. There are some principles that we adhere to. First of all, the shadow operators is in place from the beginning, from the conceptual stage of the design. So no matter who will actually operate the line or the station eventually, a shadow operator, in this particular case MTR, is in place from the beginning so that we have all the customer needs, operations requirements integrated as part of the design. Now, we very much focus on integration. First of all is the integration with multiple modes of transport. Now, what we actually shows here, the blue part, is the new terminal. But we already have a major station next to it with and this is a Rail Plus property station with over 1 million square meters of property on top of the station. And we have another metro line stations on the other side. So when we complete this development, we will form what we call a super Kowloon station with 3 stations fully integrated. And there are actually 3 railway lines that run through the area in addition to the high-speed rail. We have the dedicated airport express line. So that would take passengers from this particular location to the airport within 20 minutes, direct service. And then we also have 2 metro lines that will connect to the majority part of Hong Kong. In fact, with 1 interchange, they can practically reach all parts, most parts of Hong Kong from this point. And if we look at the Kowloon station and the Austin stations on both sides of the terminal, in addition to these 2 stations topside development, after we've built we already have something like 40,000 people living and working there in Kowloon stations. We have the tallest office building in Hong Kong, which is an extension of the CBD area. We also have luxury housing on Kowloon side and also high-grade housing on Austin, and then we have more commercial space. So we're expecting the number working and living in the area will grow to 60,000 in a few years' time. And we actually have to create an environment that people could enjoy living and working and, of course, traveling through the area. In the south of the Super Kowloon station, we also have the West Kowloon Cultural District, which will in the future be fully integrated with the station. We model the cultural district using the London South Bank concept, and in addition, we'll have the Chinese National Museum. They will build a branch there. But of course, we have also learned we have learned the disease of democracy. We have been arguing about what to build in the cultural district for the last 15 years. We haven't built anything except the Cantonese Opera House, which only, of course, the Hong Kong people would enjoy. And all the other opera houses, theaters, museums, art centers, we're still debating. But within this cultural district, we will have an autonomous road vehicle system that will circulate. People could actually, the idea is that people could call an autonomous electrical vehicle using their smartphone, and then they can be taken to the West Kowloon terminal. So that's the concept. We'll see when it will be built. So it's the integration with the major transport mode as well as the surrounding properties. We also have to integrate, of course, with a road network and walking arrangements. You probably know 90% of the Hong Kong motorized passenger journeys are actually made on public transport. This is one of the highest rate in the world. So for example, when UITP suggests that we'll double public transport patronage in 10 years, we can't do it in Hong Kong. We already have 90% using public transport. But of course, we have to provide access for buses, for taxis, coaches, and bicycles, and so on. So this is the integration is actually very important. Within the whole area, signage for all types of users are important. So this is the access consideration, and ease of interchange between different modes of transport is part of the design consideration, and hopefully we are realizing these intentions. And what we're now trying to do is to apply digital technology so that the complex transport information will be available at the fingertips of our users. So through their own smartphones, they can actually know the timetables for all the different services within the area, and they can plan their journeys and movement accordingly. So as a conclusion, in designing these major transport hubs, there are several principles that we have adhered to, in addition to the operator being present from the beginning, the accessibility of all users, and the connectivity to the surrounding areas, as well as to multiple modes of transport, as well as integration, making the whole area as one in terms of presentation, information, and use to our customers are the basic principles that we try to apply in Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Who has a question about clarification issues? So again, we won't take content questions yet, but just purely clarification, terminology, how things work. Please, we'll get you a microphone. One sec.
Hi, I'm Gabriel Hernandez from Flixbus. I'm also an expert in mobility by the TU Munich. What's the size of both of the stations you presented in terms of passengers per day or per year?
Currently, without the high-speed rail stations, we're handling the two metro stations as well as the airport express station. We're handling just around 100,000 passengers a day. And with the addition of the high-speed rail, we're expecting to handle 200,000 passengers a day in the next few years. And this is not the busiest hub that we have.
Luxembourg? The station in Luxembourg?
Yeah. The tram network is should transport 110,000 passengers per way. So in both ways, 220,000 per day. Yeah.
Anyone else with a question about terminology clarification? Yes. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Niels Selsmark from the Danish Transport Building and Housing Agency. I'd just like to know how long time did it take to build this station? You said it would open next year. Thank you.
Yes, our public line to take is that we will open the high-speed rail service and the terminal next year.
But how long time did it take altogether to build the station?
The original plan was that we'll build the whole thing within 5 years. Now it turns out to be 8 years.
How about the budget?
Fortunately, this is not a project that MTR invested in. It's actually a government investment. We're project managing for them. The cost has been overrun by 25%.
We've seen a lot worse in this country. Any other questions in terms of terminology clarification? Go ahead. Can we get a mic up here to this gentleman?
Hi, I'm John Hultén from the Swedish Knowledge Center for Public Transport. So did I understand you correctly that this is not a land value capture type of project that you are normally very good at?
Correct. In fact, at that simple location, we have seen 3 stations. On the left-hand side, we have the Kowloon stations, the Airport Express, and the Metro Line. That is what we call a rail plus property project. So MTR invested for the whole infrastructure and also the ongoing capital investment and well, as a replacement, upgrades and so on, and operations and maintenance for 50 years. And we get the development rights on top, or the property on top of the railway. Now, on the right-hand side, the Austin station, it was built by the government, but it was leased to MTR. So we were not responsible for the original capital investment, but we are responsible for the ongoing capital investment as well as operating and maintenance costs. Now, for railway, it's actually quite unique. The ongoing capital investments in 50 years could be as big in outturn cost as the original investment. So it's a major undertaking that we have taken over for the other line. And for that particular line, we also have the property development rights on top of the station as a pseudo rail plus property model. But in the middle, the high-speed rail station and the line, they are a complete government investment. And we're still negotiating on the future operations mode and the funding of that.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we'll go on now with our third case study and then pick up on some of the things we've begun discussing here. Mr. Schwemmlein, please.
Oh, perfect. So, as even Luxembourg was introduced, I better introduce our company a little bit because I assume we are less common known than Luxembourg. Flixbus is known for its green buses, but I can tell you what we are not. We are not a bus operator, even if it seems for the public like that. We run a network of European services, long-distance services, across 23 countries in Europe. We are originated in Germany, but we grew far beyond that. It's long-distance service between cities. We run in the ballpark of 1,500 buses at the moment. Actually, these buses are not run by us. So, as I say, we are not an operator. We are a mobility platform. So we are offering to the customer. We are the brand. We do the technology. We got 1,000 people in our headquarters. But we have no driver and no bus. This is all done by partner companies of us. So companies who are already bus companies and who expand with us in the long-distance market. So originally, the whole idea of Flixbus is not only of having a cool product and a new kind of bus. So you got Wi-Fi on that, and it's one brand across Europe. It's mainly the model how we are working as the brand, and the customer customer contact is not the operator, but it seems like that for the customer. This brings a lot of complexity in the system, and I will transform that a little bit to the transportation hubs, because what we see, the German market was deregulated about 4 years ago. So we started 4 years ago, and we grew very significantly, but the whole governance and the whole mindset and the infrastructure didn't grow as fast as we did. This is true also for other countries, our main markets in Italy and France. We are developing in the same or even higher speed than in Germany, but still we get a huge lack of infrastructure and a huge problem in governing how it develops. To give you an order of magnitude, we are transporting this year about 40 million passengers European-wide. What our idea is, if you today look at, because there's a lot of discussion about bus versus rail, but this is not the real discussion, and I heard that very clearly in the other comments. It's very much about getting interconnections done and getting an integrated system, and we see that buses can be a very clear mean of solving traffic problems, and we have to do a lot of education in Germany, because if a country is not used to bus travel on long distances, it's very tough to explain to local communities that it's worth investing in infrastructure, that bus is something which solves problems. They understand that on community traffic, so everyone understands that if you open a bus line in a city or in a region of Luxembourg, it helps. But on a long distance part, people are not used to that in Europe that much. And therefore, it's a very educational task for us to explain that most of our traffic comes from cars. So if you see, and I stick with the German example for a second, the German rail always claimed buses will be the competitor, and they're going to have huge problems with buses. When we started, they had 135 million passengers in long-distance rail. They lost about 1 or 2 million against us, but they put a huge competitive pressure on the rail, because we got Wi-Fi on board, we got good prices, we got consistent quality, we got a good technology behind that. And rail reacted to that, and now they are transporting, I think, ballpark 145 million, so 10 million more than they did originally. this year, and we're going to transport another 25 million in Germany. So we generated in total 35 million new passengers in public transportation, which originally couldn't travel because they couldn't afford it, or they come from cars. So that's why we have to do a lot of discussion in Germany and Europe about buses. And if I think about infrastructure, and I've seen when I see the pictures of this impressive project in Hong Kong, yeah, sometimes I wish I would be a rail operator, not a bus operator, because as a bus operator, you are thinking in very small dimensions. You are thinking of bus stations. I got 1,000 stations out there in Europe, so 1,000 different cities, and even more bus stations. And it goes from very high-class projects, which means something like Hamburg or something, where it follows the logic of train stations. You got integrated concepts. You got nice surrounding. But we also simply have cities with a couple of 100,000 people where we stop at the curbside. So there's no infrastructure. There's not even a roof. And this is how we as a brand have to build up not only our system, but also the infrastructure. And so what we see is that if we talk to communities, a couple of things are very important from our perspective. And we already had a great example of you got the operator on board very early. And we see that a lot of discussions in Germany and in Europe take place out of a governmental perspective on a mean of transportation. So there are discussions on, I build this hub like that because I think the market and the customer acts like this. And typically, if there is not very strong knowledge, a lot of the assumptions are wrong. So for example, we got a city, Kowloon, they built their bus station at the airport, like half an hour outside of the city. Our traffic streams were like reduced by 60, 70%. The market is essentially dead. Yeah? And this is just one location. There's a lot of politics involved, of course. But who was not involved was the original stakeholder, the users, and the operators who have to use that service. And so no one really asked for us. They just presented a solution, because typically the problem and the good thing in bus transport is the infrastructure is relatively cheap if you do it very well, because you don't need huge investments. You can use existing street infrastructure and so on. Therefore, the thought process is not as thorough as for an airport or for a train station, but nevertheless, you can destroy a lot of value by making wrong decisions and not involving users, customers, and potential operators in the process. And we see that with this stakeholder involvement, as the more far away it is from the actual market, the more wrong get the decisions. And it's not about policy lobbying or something like that. It's about explanation, as I said, because we have got great examples. And in Leipzig, we already we had a very tough time at the beginning. There was a discussion, you have to stop at the airport. Actually, we do it. So we stop at the airport and at this conference center. So I came with the bus, which is just 2 minutes away from here. But our main hub is at the train station, because people connect ground transportation, rail, bus, car on the main station. So we have to be very central. We have to be right at the heart of public transportation, because our customers do not have a car. They don't come with a car. They use public transportation. It took us some explanation, case studies, numbers, and so on, and also explanation that the bus generates value for a city. And after that, the public opinion and also the opinion in politics changed. Dresden is a nice example. Leipzig is another example where now new projects are on the way, already decided or in building in Germany, which are closely to the main station, very cost efficient and already pre-discussed with us, so we can ensure there's going to demand, there's going to be a financing model. And that's the second part, understanding that if you efficiently use your funds, you can, with a growing market and a growing demand, also refund what you invested. So this can be an economic model. If you early on discuss, if you size it the wrong way, you're going to have a lot of investments or too little investments, and it's going to be wrong investments. We get examples where they invested too much, and it's hard to make it work because of wrong decisions on location. But we also have discussion where there's too little investment, and even we would say, if you give us the opportunity to work with you, we can help you financing it. It can be a case, as a train station can be a case if you see the whole effects. And the third part, which is from our perspective very important, is already now to, and this is also a very prime example on both speakers before me, already anticipate technology development and do not only stick in where you currently are, and anticipate the higher connectivity between modes of transportation, the higher mobility, mobile usage, the higher travel need, and also implement very open infrastructure, because also in hubs we see, if I'm talking about, and this is a very simple example, Wi-Fi we install ourselves in stations now, so because no one does it, so we get Wi-Fi in our stations, no one pays for it, but it doesn't matter, we help to develop these stations. But for dynamic information, you typically have to build up something, which does the city. They typically use a proprietary system. You have an API. I have like 1,000 cities. I have 1,000 APIs. It will never work. So if there is at least one simple standard, we try to find this now with the major hubs, about how can we integrate different modes of transportation, and not only coming from your public transportation where you own everything, where you have everything under control. We have one system. There is openness needed to foster this growth. And as I said, the major discussion in the whole governance part is location. And this is, and that's the old thing, it's location, 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 nothing else matters. If you build the nicest bus stop ever seen and the wrong location, it's totally useless. It will be a nightmare. We see it in Stuttgart at the moment. They build a very nice bus station. They build it nicely outside the city, 40 minutes. And now they realized, oh, we should have talked to the Flixbus guys because there is no traffic. There's like half the traffic they expected. They have to double their fees. That won't help you, yeah, because it will just decrease your traffic further. So building a nice infrastructure in the wrong location is maybe the worst thing you can do. So build a medium nice thing in a great location, and we will make it work. Because, there's a little arrow on it, 80% of our customers are using not individual transport to get to the bus station. So this is why buses, if you look at people who use it, it's people with little money, a little more time, so it's typical public transportation users, so you need to integrate it, and that's why the location is so, so important. And now we got some images where, and we already thought about this, what are the most important things, and it starts very basic. And this discussion is already very important, because if infrastructure in the mind of policymakers, you think of airports, you think of fantastic train stations, you think of integrated transportation hubs, but it's difficult to scale down and think what's the appropriate infrastructure that I have to provide and how can I refinance it. And we have great examples in some cities where we have integrated models. We have this in Munich, we have this in Hamburg, because it's a major hub. They anticipated a huge growth. They talked to us, and we try to also convince big cities to invest, because we believe it's a case. If you create it the same way like the case examples before, you have to do it integrated, you have to do it in the right location, you have to also use other elements. It's not just a plain floor. So that's a way for big transportation hubs. But my main call is, if the main important thing in the whole governance part is early and very open interaction, because even if it's a small project, it's a huge impact on the individual mode of transportation. And we see that every day. Location is so important that the discussion also towards the public is very important to explain what your policy thinkings are. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Do we have clarification issues, first of all, on what we've just heard there from Mr. Schwemblein? I should issue, first of all, an apology because I used the word operator. I'm sorry about that. So I take it back. I understand. Platform. Anybody else have a terminology question, clarification question? Okay, then let us now launch the content discussion, as it were. And maybe I will start out by picking up on the point about bringing in stakeholders early, which essentially goes to our second question among our guiding questions. I had mentioned the 3 different guiding questions, and one of them is, at what political and organizational level should decisions to develop passenger hubs be taken? And of course, the question of user and stakeholder participation is under that roof. So let me ask the other 2 speakers how they have approached user participation and input. What have you done in Luxembourg on that level?
In Luxembourg, we have the chance, first of all, that the whole transport, the whole public transport, urban transport, because we are talking here only about urban transport, not long distances, are being organized by a public authority. But the public authority does not run the buses, for example. You have private companies also that are running the buses, for example. Or even other mode of transport are being run by private companies. But the regulatory and the organization is done by this public authority. And that's a big advantage, because we talk a lot then also with all the different public transport companies. We also have the chance that we have unified tarification in Luxembourg. So you buy one ticket for 1 year and you can use any transport you want. For example, you can then go with your ticket from the train to the bus or whatever. And we want even enlarge this, because we introduced also, I didn't spoke about that, a telematic system. So with an e-ticket, and you have an e-card at the end. On this card you can really download what you need, even until to the car sharing or carpooling, whatever other services that we will offer in the next months. So we have good discussions, and we tried to really to integrate all the operators in Luxembourg from the beginning on in all our projects. And for example, now we are planning the next part of our mobility concept for the next 10 years, the next investments. And the first, what we are doing now, we launched 3 months ago a large survey in the whole country. 80,000 people are participating in this survey to see what do they want, what are their habitudes, why they take the bus and not the tram, for example, or not the car, and even the bicycle, whatever. And we include even in this survey 40,000 commuters from abroad. So at the end we will have in September an enormous database with all the detailed information that we need for the building up of the next mobility plan. And the second thing what we will want to do is in September we will launch also a study, and we'll do this with one of the big 4 companies like PVW, Ernst & Young, whoever, one of them. We will really analyze what is the costs and what is the output of, depending on which mode of transport we want to construct in the next years. For example, roads for individual cars or buses or trains or whatever. So at the end we have a complete scheme which we can use also and help us decide in the future investments, what would be the best investment to do. So we do a large analysis really to have at the end an integrated system, but the integrated system can work with different modes of transport and also these different actors, private and public, for example.
Thanks very much. Jacob Chakpui, how have you approached that?
Before that, I need to explain slightly, before talking about engaging the stakeholders, I need to explain slightly how Hong Kong actually does its planning and building of railway. The initial part would be what we call zoning and general planning. These are the responsibilities of the local government, of the Hong Kong government. And of course, there are public consultation and engagement requirements by law that they have to do in order to achieve agreements in zoning and general planning. After that, if it involves transport, they will engage people like ourselves who, although it's still majority owned by government, but we operate on a commercial principle. So what we do is we take the general planning plans and develop specific design for the solutions. Okay, they might specify certain office area, shopping area, residential areas, and we actually come up with a design that will meet the planning parameters. So government actually makes sure that whatever we come up with as a design will meet the planning requirements. Now, during our design, we start engaging the actual users, potential users. It could be office businesses who use offices, or customers who use transport as well as shopping mall and so on. So we actually work with some of our potential customers to come up with a good design. And at the same time, we would develop the financing business case, the financial model to realize the design. So it could be our investment, a pure commercial investment, or it could be it's not commercially viable, so it could be a government investment. So through that design, we reach agreement with the government, and then we develop the detailed design and deliver the project. So we engage, or the government and ourselves, we engage different parties under different requirements during the whole process.
Anders Schwemmlein, I'd be interested in your response to what you just heard. And you mentioned many planning authorities tend to project what they think are users' wishes, preferences, and needs rather than actually finding out about them. Do you have any best practice examples where that's not the case, and governments that are perhaps using, among other tools, big data to really try to get at what the actual patterns are?
In our industry, it's very tricky to have these examples, and I'm sure in other countries where the bus is already much more typical mode of transportation, and governments are much more aware of it, there might be better examples. At the moment, it's very discussion driven, and we try to deliver the numbers from our database. So with the we should reach 100 million passengers this year. So we have sound projections about how people are traveling, which locations they are using, and in some cities like Berlin, we have 6 different stops, and we already can tell them how they developed, in which direction. So we see it very strongly also as our part in this discussion, not only to lobby for something, but to give a background on why I'm thinking it's the right decision. And I want to highlight one point which is very relevant in the Hong Kong example, and I think not very European, is if you have private companies on the other hand who want to use it at the end. In Europe, I often see that it's very much driven from the community and the state, because in many cases they are fully responsible for everything. And in the Luxembourg example, it's the case at the end you are commercially responsible if the numbers are not met by with the passengers and so on, and they plan in that way. Also things where private companies are involved, and they tell them the result afterwards. If this is, and in your example it would be, this is your building, you can rent it or you can leave it, and then sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And this is a very European approach where you believe very strongly that, especially in transportation, the state is fully responsible for everything, but in the end, there are private parties involved, and it's very well advised to ask them for advice and look for a joint business case out of data and what the analogies are.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask about something else that Anders Schwemmlein also mentioned, and that was a subject in our open plenary, in our first plenary yesterday, which is the challenges of government and planning process often being a great deal slower than technological development. And Andre mentioned it in the context of avoiding technology lock-in, essentially. And certainly Jacob talked about trying to build in autonomous driving as part of the mix. How is Luxembourg, for example, approaching that challenge? Because as you said, this is government of Luxembourg is spearheading this, and as we know, governments don't move quickly.
That's not the case for Luxembourg. No, I can give you a concrete example. We did in Luxembourg a study. A study had been done by Jeremy Rifkin in a large process. We developed this study, and it's all around the question of, for example, e-mobility and mobility in general is one big part of this. And we launched a process that took place for 1 year. We had around 400 actors, public and private, that had been involved in this discussion process. And now we have the study on the table, and together with the public and the private sector, we develop the solutions for this. And that's because, for example, when I mentioned the e-mobility, we have a very ambitious target. We want to be already in 2025 as high as Norwegian, for example, in e-mobility. And it's it's a kind, as the public sector is important, I think, because many investments must be done by the public sector, especially the big infrastructures. But the question is always to be open-minded and to do partnerships with the private sector, and that's very important.
And what is driving that commitment to e-mobility? Because you did mention that in your talk, and clearly that aspect is exemplary. What's the driving force there in terms of governance?
I would say it's a question about it's also a personnel questions. When I take I have a very good collaboration, for example, with the Minister of Economy, a very good understanding with him. But we are from two different parties, but that has nothing to do with politics. We are very engaged since a long time ago. I in the mobility sector, he in the more economic sector, and we are both interested in both sectors. And so we have an enormous good working together to really put in place now the strategy of what had been described in this Rifkin process in Luxembourg, in mobility, for example. And we have short ways in Luxembourg, and that's a big advantage. That's in Luxembourg, to have a rendezvous by the minister, you don't take 3 months, you take 3 hours. And that's the difference. So I see private companies all the months long, and it's no problem in Luxembourg to do this. I can't really separate my public function from the private sector. That's not had something to do with this, but I'm very open to involve them and to see how we could resolve problems together.
Thank you very much. Jacob Chekpi, do you also have some thoughts on these issues?
I wish Luxembourg government could be running the Hong Kong government. We even as an investor, as a commercial entity, we in the transport industry, we struggle with how to keep up with the proper technological advances. A lot of our assets have a lifespan of 20 years, 30 years, even 40 years. How could we make investment decisions that will actually allow us to incorporate, to live with new technology in such a long time? Now, unfortunately, I think we have some successes, but we're still struggling. I normally joke about this, saying that new technology is doing business at the speed of light, and we're still doing business at the speed of a train or a bus. It doesn't matter; it's still too slow compared to the speed of light. So we are learning through engaging a digital business. Fortunately, as a commercial entity, we are free to develop into new business areas, including the digital business, and we learn from how they make it work, and we try to incorporate some of the lessons learned into our transport business.
And if I can pick up on the point from Luxembourg, that's a very good example, because in many cases it works if the operational decisions are done on the right level, and it should be low enough that you know the concrete project well enough, but you need strong support, and even if it's signaling support from the top, that this is important, that this is the way to go. I think you need this direction and the strategy. And might it be then on national level, or even if it's not done there, you need this strategy and the clear assignment of this is the way we want to move. And then the doing can be done on a community level, or whatever the level is right for the specific hub. But we see that this combination is very important. And the second thing I want to highlight on the technology thing is, I think the point of having a clear picture on where you want to go, but on the other hand, not being dogmatic is very important. That because in this, it's impossible in the 40 years, as you say, to be sure what happens. But nevertheless, we have to make decisions. Everyone has to make decisions. So we have to go in one way, and then we have to keep our eyes open and say, okay, maybe we were wrong with that decision, and we have to maneuver in a different way. I think keeping this flexibility is very important, and there is no solution for the 40 years time problem.
The last point, I completely agree, especially because of the digitalization in mobility in the next years that will revolutionize completely the whole sector. No one, neither the automobile sector, nor train, nor tram, whatever, will be apart. The digitalization will give us much more possibilities in the future. And that will go very, very fast. And that's a big chance. I think really seeing this chance, seeing that digitalization is a big chance is important. And that was the key moment why we engaged in Luxembourg Jeremy Rifkin. Not Jeremy Rifkin is a guy who wrote already many books. He's not
a plenary speaker here at the forum.
Yeah, he's not in an inventory of all the systems, but he has the capacity to resume very good what is the trend, let's say this. But the key moment was to take him as a personality and to really mobilize the whole country around this. And at the end, when we presented the study 6-7 months ago, we had 800 people in the room, so the 300-400 that participate in this whole process from the public and the private sector, but even the NGOs were there to listen, and everybody was really enthusiastic to go now on and to really put in place a strategy to realize this.
Thank you very much. Yes, I would like to take input from the audience. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll get a microphone over to you. And again, it would be great if you'd remind us who you are.
Hello, my name is Christophe Andrier from HiQ. We have heard the topic of platforms from different point of views. One is a platform provider, so someone you could think is driving buses, but he's got a platform, and then we have got another platform, a station with park and ride and everything and charging everything. What would be interesting for me from the competitor point of view as well as from the regulations point of view is what about the cooperation of platforms? How to make this happen, because there will be a border always. It's very simple to understand for Luxembourg, for instance. The Luxembourg platform will not solve the topics of Belgium and France and Germany. So platforms will have to work together. If you take Flixbus can work for their buses and maybe some other topics, but then it goes to other sectors like energy. And this will not be solved by the platform of Flixbus. So how to work together on the regulation point of view as well as on the competitive point of view? Because what I see is people are taking places at the moment. They just take their place and put borders everywhere. But in terms of the user, he does not want to use 50 platforms. So from the regulatory point of view as well as from the competition point of view, it would be interesting.
Thank you. Who'd like to get us started with an answer to that? André Schwemmlein, you want?
So I take the market competitive view, and then someone else can say something to regulations, because yes, that's very true. We see the pattern in mobility and in other means of transportation, and we got a lot of discussion about how do we integrate services. How is there one consistent offering? Shouldn't be there one platform which includes everything and so on. We see that this is. And I like the comparison about the change we see in mobility at the moment. It's a little bit like the internet in the 90s. Like everyone has the feeling there is happening something huge. There are new technologies, new platforms arising. There are a lot of new trends. But it's impossible to say even what's in 10 years and how the fundamental changes will change the landscape. So I say, I wouldn't think too much now about to fix from a regulatory or from a governmental view markets which are currently developing, and I don't mean in negative regulation, but also in this, I have to combine things, because it will happen in a natural way. We are already looking to other means of transportation, we are looking to inner city, but the main important part is everyone has to build up his own stake, and then in a later stage, in 5 or 10 years, when the internet age is a little bit more mature in mobility, there's going to be more collaboration, more integration, and then there's going to be this more consistent view, because every decision we take today about how this future integration should look like will be 100% wrong. And therefore we shouldn't take it, we should develop these individual parts and then see how they evolve over time. It would be nice if from the government view to say this is the solution and please plug in, but that's not going to work. It didn't work in the internet, it will not work in transportation.
Thank you. Minister Bausch?
I completely agree with this analysis. I want to really say that the most important thing is to understand that we must come away and to see different parts of mobility separated, each one from another. So the question is, mobility as a service is the future. So it's not anymore, it's the question, what is the best for me to go from A to B? The fastest, the highest quality. For example, do I have Wi-Fi in the mode of transport or not? That depends what I want to do on my way. But is the quality is important and the fastest way from A to B. So mobility as a service, and that's the major point. And I don't think that you have to regulate on this. At the moment, you have, it's enormous. I was 3 weeks ago. I was at Montreal at the conference of in Montreal, the URTP summit. It was amazing to see what is happening everywhere. And you can feel and see it from conference to conference, how it is changing. So the only thing that politics has to do is to accompany, to really, on a positive way, be on this way. So regulation at the end is good for security reasons, for other reasons, but not. You can. I think the innovation is there. It's only to take it. You have only to take it. But as you said, it will change very dramatically and very quickly in the future.
Hong Kong may be slightly unique, and this Hong Kong is only a very small place. So our railway network actually covers, about 85% of the population is within the catchment area of the railway network. So Hong Kong government has defined the railway as the backbone of the public transport. So basically we serve all the trunk routes, and buses and the other modes of transport really are serving as what we call the last mile connection from railway stations. But of course they also allow competitive routes, but there are certain requirements, such as, for example, the fare has to be comparable to the railway. So they cannot charge a higher fare than the railway, because they're normally slower. And also they have to look at the street capacity for parking, of stopping the buses and so on. So this kind of environment also makes sure that the railway operators has to be competitive and efficient. Otherwise, the buses could pick on routes which we charge or overcharge in fare. They will come in with a slightly lower fare and compete our passengers. So it is the Hong Kong government's way of optimizing the use of resources and at the same time maintaining competitive strength of different modes of transport.
Thank you very much. Who else has a question or a comment for the panel? Done out there? Please.
Hi, Michael Robson, consultant. A question about the payment of facilities. I fully agree that the state or local government provides the bus station or whatever it happens to be. And if it's local buses which are using it, I presume they don't pay. But if it's a private bus company, whether it's Flexbus or anybody else, do they pay usage charge for using the facilities? And the analogy I would draw is if you're a train operator, you have to pay to use a railway station.
I can answer only for us, of course. If we get infrastructure which we can use, we are paying for it. We are paying a usage fee, but it's you need for. I don't know if this is true everywhere, but for the infrastructure, you need a more clever way on doing it than only usage fees. I mean, if airport was only live from usage fee from airlines, they would most likely not exist. So there you need a little more clever commercial model, or you do it very, very cheap, which is also a way for smaller cities. Then you can also get it only from fees. But yes, we pay for usage, and I think in its the importance is to differentiate like really the local public transport, and this is also true for Hong Kong. I mean, you cannot simply, a city that size, or also Luxembourg, you cannot leave everything free and look how it develops. You have to decide, this is our mode of transportation, we pay for it, and this is our way to go. I mean, that's totally fair. On long distance, it's something else. You can give more freedom to the market and provide infrastructure, and that's what in airline and bus happens.
But you must also see that the problem is also that it depends on the situation. For example, when you look public transports, when I see Luxembourg City and the suburbs of Luxembourg City, organizing there the public transport and invested it by the state or by the city of Luxembourg, maybe making all the investments, you have an indirect return on invest, because all these jobs would not be there without these investments. Without a good public transport, without this tramway, in 10 years, nobody wants to occupy a job there, and no bank would invest not one penny there. So then you have a return on invest indirect. That depends largely on the situation. For long distances, is a completely different situation. Tourism impact, and so on.
Thank you very much. Other questions in the audience? Go ahead, please.
Hi, Gabriel Hernandez from Mexican, working at Flixbus. Can you name your favorite hub, transport hub in Europe or in your region, global region, in terms of accessibility, governance, and integration of the economies that are generated there? Your favorite transportation hub, like your favorite example, what will it be?
We're going to let the panel do that, and then we can take a vote amongst the whole audience if they agree. So, yes, that's a great question. Please.
That's a tricky question. I'm going to start with it. I like... It's not a relevant, huge bus station for us, but I like the idea of the Frankfurt airport, because it's very well connected to the city with the S-Bahn. It's got a highway, high-speed rail. It got like the Autobahn right beside that. It got a bus stop integrated in the airport. So I think that's already very well advanced in the idea of combining a lot of different modes of transportation, being close to a city, and having multi-usage in terms of offices, hotels, and so on. So that's a very impressive project from my perspective. I mean, it's grown, but it's also well invested. So I think this is a very strong hub, which we see.
For me, it's Copenhagen. For several reasons, because Copenhagen understood already years ago that the urban development is largely depending on how you organize your city in general. And it's not for nothing that Copenhagen is always in the top 10 of the competitiveness cities in the world, the highest quality of life, and the best possibilities you have also to organize your mobility. You know? Copenhagen is for me a very good example how you should organize your city, your hub.
Jacob?
I have to give it a pass. We are part of a group called COMET, which is the Community of Metros. We have 34 participants, over 30 participants. I've been to most of the cities, and I've looked at the different transport hubs. There are different features, different advantages that are suitable for the local environment. That works perfectly locally, but it might not work in other places. So I don't want to name anyone in fear of upsetting some of my clients as well, because I also operate in different cities around the world.
We have a little bit of time. If anybody in the audience wants to contribute the name of their favorite hub and tell us why, I'd love to hear it. Go ahead.
I have one remark, Christophe Fondrier from HiQ, coming from Stuttgart. Stuttgart is trying to do exactly what you like in Frankfurt. To put the train, long-distance train, tram, and S-Bahn together. The issue is only that at the moment they have a big Baustelle at the main station, but at the end of the day, they will try to do exactly to be your favorite at the end of the day, even if at the moment it doesn't work. I know, I have seen that, I see it every day.
I'm really looking forward when the Stuttgart train station is done and we can stop buses there again. So I don't know when it will happen, but it will be a big day for us. That then Stuttgart is already is again suitable connected to our network.
If anybody else would like to submit the name of a best practice hub, please do. And otherwise, do we have any more questions in the audience? Go ahead.
Hi again. More than naming my favorite station, here is a reflection I want to share with everyone in the audience, and is that we are seeing a very new science in which we can name very few very good examples of the things that we want to do in this case transportation hubs. And I want to make a call to dedicate more energy and more help in setting guidelines and regulations towards more successful projects in this nature. Thanks.
Thank you. I have a question back here. The lady in, yeah.
Hi, I'm Sandra from KfW. I have a question. If I would be a representative of a city and I want, with regard to urban development, a private investor to go to a certain area which is underdeveloped or which is low income, which is an industrial area, but my long-term vision is to also connect it better. What incentive could I give for a private investor to go to this area, which implies a high risk?
Thank you very much. Would you like to take a shot at that?
I think today connectivity is one of the most important aspects when you want to develop an area. But it's very difficult when you start by zero and you don't have activities, economic activities. Then it's very difficult also to invest, because normally you have no money to invest. So it's. But I think today we have because I don't agree with you that you don't have enough examples in the world, because I think we have enormous positive dynamic actually in many cities in the world, even in underdeveloped regions, even in Africa, for example, where they take these chances and try to build up their hubs or their to do their urbanization by defending the philosophy of what I said, mobility as a service, but from the beginning on. And sometimes that can take a little bit time until you have, especially when you start by nothing or by very few, because you don't have the financial possibilities to invest directly. But it can be interesting then, especially at this moment, to invest or to think in these directions, because all the even researchers and makers and doers, they don't go to cities and to regions that don't take care about what is happening today. And that is also very important to understand. For example, you cannot develop, even in a rich country, Luxembourg is a rich country, to say it, even in Luxembourg you cannot attract researchers from the area of, for example, that they think as in the direction of mobility as a service when your country is organized completely in a different way. They will not come to your country. And so, and mobility and all what is around mobility, the whole digitalization that will be around in the next years is very important to understand that. So it's not easy to answer to this, but I think you must understand that the world is changing dramatically at this moment, especially in mobility.
Andres Schwemmlein, you mentioned social inclusion several times, at least indirectly, in the sense of serving lower income passengers. Are there good examples of what the questioner just asked? Governments that specifically set out to give incentives to create a framework where there are clear advantages for a platform or an operator to offer that service?
It's a little bit the result at the moment of the market, because many, if you look at the big flagships project that governments have in mind, it's typically the high investment, it's high speed, and so on, and you typically tend to forget that not everyone will be able to use high-speed rail, and therefore also having just an eye for this. It's not about like we don't need subsidies, and I don't think it's the right way to ask for more subsidies especially in private markets. Either you're private or you're public. So if you want to be private, then do it fully. But I think not only looking a little bit beyond your own experience and horizon, and accepting that there is other needs than your personal ones. And I also do this. You tend to take yourself as the prime example of how the world should be, but that's not the case. There are a lot of other needs, and for me it's more about having an open eye and an ear for the needs of, and there won't be the one solution fits all. In the future of mobility, it's all going to be about choice, and it's not only going to be about choice by segment. So I don't say poor people use the bus and rich people use the plane, and the middle class uses the train. That's not the way I mean it. I mean, there's going to be in the future very tremendous opportunities every time you travel. And today I came by bus, I will leave by plane, and that's, I think, I don't say I'm but that's an example how the future of mobility looks like, and it will be in the cities. Sometimes you use car sharing, sometimes you use a tram, sometimes you use a bus, and to be open for a lot of solutions and not only say, okay, there's one solution and we have to go for it. But
in fact, the ITF has a study on regulating transport with reference to public policy, societal aims like inclusion. And I think there might have been an additional study presented today on that. Yes. So you might want to also get in touch with people from the ITF to find out how to get the details on that, because it's very interesting indeed. So I'm looking at the clock and I'm afraid we're pretty much out of time, but may I please ask everybody to give a warm round of applause to our speakers. And also, many thanks for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. And if you come to the gala dinner and the awards ceremony, you will see an award given to an enterprise. I'm not going to tell you where or what, but which certainly has done a great deal to promote social inclusion in lower income areas. So that's just a little teaser to get you all over to the gala dinner, and look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again. Bye-bye.